Yes, it's open.
Yeah, folks, this is a place. Do you hear me? Okay, it's not echoing.
Yes.
I'm gonna kill this. How can I do this? Okay, so good afternoon. So I'm here Asada from MIT. It's a great pleasure giving a talk over here. My talk is in a sense a little serious because it's really a critical time for robotics community. I think the whole landscape of robotics is changing because the big tech giants are pouring billions of dollars into this space. And somehow overshadowing the academic research work, although we worked for many years, but reinforcement learning just flash out all the stuff. And so the students taking my robotics course, every day they are working hard to study kinematics and the dynamics, which is very challenging, right? They raise my hand, the professor, do I still need to study this? A good question, I'd say, and then how to rumble something to defend all the good stuff. It's really actually challenging. And they say that the data solve everything. The data solve the robotics and automation. So you go away. It's not actually the issues. Of course, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with it. But it is the 21st century that we have to do something. I think the robotics is much richer and more profound issues involved. So it's not just the data, but it's a time for us to rethink what constitutes robotics and what is our original missions, and how we can go from this point. So in the sense, I like to go back to my time and what was the original motivations and what the sort of scientific curiosity we had. And then you find robotics a very much rich area, not just the data, that what I like to say. This is the slide I showed quite often to my students. Yeah, when I started robotics research and when I was a graduate student at Kyoto University, the robotics is kind of in its infancy. So there's no IEEE Robotics Automation Society. We don't know where to publish the papers, and there are not many papers to read, and absolutely no textbook, But I know my textbook was my hand. And if you look at my hand, your hand, and there are so many things involved in here. There are many things that you can explore from here. And that's a very important point. We never ever, seriously understand the functions involved here in a way that can be transferred to our machine, that's a robot. The time I came up with nightly I look at my hand and I came up with the grasp stability and the theory when I was a first year graduate student, and to consider some kind of potential and maybe strain energies are stored here, and this potential energy values depending on the configuration of this object, also the shape and the kinematic structure of the fingers. And then if you plotted the isopotential curve, you see a nice actually local minimum. This is a stable grasping point, which gives actually a good insight as how we can actually quantify the grasp stability. So at that time, there's no good way of controlling the the force or the torque. So I invented the way of doing that. It's this is the first serial elastic actuators, having the coil spring between actuators and the load. So measuring the deformation of the coil spring, we can get a pretty good and of course measurement. And after that, when I had the chance to move to US and I got the job at the Carnegie Mellon postdoc, and I found that the high the torque motors just coming out, and rare earth magnets and 42 megagauss airstep. Now it's a much bigger ones, but I know this came up with a big breakthrough, along with the high power MOS-FET just coming out. So these two allow me to build the robot that has actually no gearing. That's the first directed robot that the Carnegie Mellon. It's commercialized nicely by Adept, and then still being used the clean room automation, which has been handling the wafer. And now renewed interest in direct drive, but they combined some low gear ratio, so semi-direct drive. The feature is that it's very clean and back drivable, so you can handle the negotiation with the rough tenants very nicely. Also, taking that the features of back drivability, we can actually detect the humans' skills. So this is early work with imitation learning, because grabbing the direct drive robot and then actually show your skills, demonstrate it. And we get the data, the both and the force and the position, and analyzing the data, extracting the control algorithm behind that, and transfer that to the robot. So that's actually now people call it imitation learning. But I think this is the very important thing for me, because my original vision is that you need to understand what's happening here, but it's hard to extract because we do this at the subconscious level, the knowledge, right? We never ever pay attention to it. So the best way is to observe, get the right measurement from it, and reveal something which control algorithms which we have developed without knowing it, and we use that. So that's early work 87. The skill acquisition. And then the 25 years later, maybe robotics has reached the point that it's very dexterous enough to do something to help the humans. So I attach the robot to the human body. It's so you have a third arm or extra limbs into your body. The sponsoring this work, crazy work, was Boeing, and then this is the final assembly process of a big airplane. And most of the work is either ceilings or floor. And it would ergonomically very difficult to ask it to do. Doing that every day, 9 to 5, it's a hard problem. So maybe we can actually ask some robots to help the humans in doing. Maybe that's good enough. So looking at your body, there are many places you can touch the extra limbs, and the goal is that if you can do the control very well, and knowing the human intention, human perceive this extra limbs as just an extension of your body, part of your body, and then that is actually ultimate human robot interactions, which I've been dreaming about. Now, one of the best applications that we found is space robotics, and here's the super limbs attached to astronauts spacesuit. And once you wear the spacesuit, spacesuit is internally pressurized, so it's very stiff to the bend. So even though the very muscular super athlete astronauts, once you wear that, actually very much limited actions. And then in particular, they had to walk on the moon, and then this is Apollo time. They all fall. And then once you fall, it's harder to get up. So we proposed NASA to attach the extra limbs to assist the astronauts in doing this kind of work. So this is the newly developed robot arms. Yeah, we published recently. So interestingly, studying the astronauts, very similar problem we found in the elder care. Because as people getting older, their physical strengths and bendable angles getting shrink, and then even eyesight getting narrower, and then the decline the balancing the capability. So similar. So and actually, elderly care is so much important. Everywhere. Elderly people. They underestimate the risk of fall, then they fall. But also they overestimate the risk of fall. They stop taking any exercise that increase the more balancing problem, then they fall. So whichever the case, 30 million fall cases, 1 out of 4 US adults, 65 years older, is actually the major issue. So yeah, we built a robot that can assist that kind of stuff. This is a Tai Chi assist robot. So we have to encourage them to take more exercise, but a safety net is needed. This robot has to move together with the Tai Chi is kind of slow, so it's not a difficult to support it, So that is something, interesting that we have done. And actually, Tai Chi is the stuff, save the, caregivers effort, but the hardest part when you interview the caregivers, is basically transferring the patient from bed, out of bed to some wheelchair. This is hard because before using this kind of cradle, so you have to put the sheet, and who's going to put the sheet? That's an enormous effort. So this is the collaborative job with the Addison Camera at Stanford. And we built this kind of special robot that goes beneath the human body, lying on the bed. So once you spread the sheet, it's easy to carry this. And this one extended in many directions. So Bindbots, I think Laura's somewhere there, actually, agreed to me. It's so flexible, so it can actually, deal with the very unusual type of grasping. Yeah, and then even the human can be lifted. It's quite powerful. So that is the things we have been working on. So up to this point, I think I'm convincing you that the robotics is quite rich. Any questions up to this point? Are you okay doing this? Okay, let's move on. So the main topic today is actually not looking back, but it's 2026, and we have a big challenge from just the big data things. So I'm going to talk about the Koopman and global linearization. This may be a method. Maybe I should show this slide first. So I know data solved robotics. And this sounds robotics is just an applications or the subfield or physical context of AI. Yeah, or kind of yeah, citizenship is very much limited in this. Of course, we know there's some the weakness of current technologies, and so data efficiency, and reward design, and the generalization safety. We can say many things, and then we can improve it. But I know the challenge is that Yeah, $1 billion research funding. I know it's a little hard to compete in the industry in that way. So let's think about a little bit actually bigger perspective. What comes out and after this era, and that may be our role as in academia. So it said that this is the equation of motions and the assumption needed. But yeah, just using this in a mode of representation, treating the robotics in that way, may end up with some of the fundamental difficulties, and that's where we are now. And also, as I just showed, the neural net-based representation too, having some kind of difficulty, and then things are very much brute force and a method in many ways. Although it shows a very flashy videos and then actually, in fact, it is very much improved. Very fascinating things are happening. Maybe it's time to think about the third method, and at the representation level. This guy is the differential algebra-based method, neural net based method. The third method I like to talk about is compositional operator-based representation. And in the history of control, once the control community gained a new representation method, like a state space, boom, there's so many actually big and finding, created. So it may be worth doing to, find something different, representations. And the Koopman operators, believe or not, can represent the nonlinear, highly nonlinear dynamic systems, the linear systems in high-dimensional space. So nonlinearity disappeared. This the linearization is not actually a pointwise, Taylor expansion type of linearization, which is valid only in the vicinity of that point. But this guy is global linearization. The entire space is linear. So it's hard to believe, but I know that is happening. Also interesting to note is that in many cases in robotics, we have to deal with this sort of a switched systems. Some dynamic equations working only in this region. Once it's going to other regions, we have to use a different one. Yeah, but using the Koopman operator theory carefully, we can actually get the unified representation that's applied across the whole these segmented regions, and get the one equation that is to apply to the whole the space. So this particular part is mostly important to me because the hard robotics problem is in many ways it's connected to the switching nature or hybrid nature of the dynamics, right? Because the robot actually interact with the environment. So having a contact here, the dynamics of my arms is different from just moving this one through the on the air, or walking here, then one leg, contact situation. It's an open kinematic chain. Once you put the next to the leg, it just goes through kinematic chain to some fundamental changes in your dynamic equations is occurring at this point. So how we can actually deal with such a challenging, switched systems in a unified way? That's a very important point. So we propose to actually, use the Koopman operator as a mechanism for unifying otherwise the segmented, switched dynamical systems and subsuming, many different, dynamics into a, and within a globally linear model. Which is of course amenable for control. So that's the goal. Actually, switch the system, the hybrid systems, having so many research work. This is the only in the robotics community. So many great works have been done. I know. Actually, however, this is really a hard problem. So they have to take some kind of simplifications. Dealing with the quasi-dynamic or quasi-static models, or the reduced dimensionality, complexity, or in a linearization at the reference trajectory or point or predefined contact mode sequence that is assumed. I'd like to remove all these things and then create the new methodology in representation based on the Koopman operator. So we focus on the switch to the dynamical systems, and then actually we make it going through some adjustment to the original Koopman theory, so that you get the Koopman compatible physical models. In doing so, we had to deal with the discontinuity and the causality issues. And then also original system is not applicable to control systems, so we have to make it control coherent system. We do this to improvement, and then once you get the linear model, we apply the linear MPC, which is actually complex optimization, very strong, very quick to compute, and then applies to variety of applications as listed here. So yeah, even just looking at the simple sit to stand and motion to human actually switches many at least 3 or 4 the different modes. And at the end, we had to stand up and then stabilize the system, which is actually feedback controller, right? Before reaching there, it has to go through different ones. But I know you never notice the switching of your controls. There may be some actually different way of internally, building the model and perceiving kind of balancing the stuff, So we'd like to, to discover something beyond that. So I'd like to just introduce the Koopman theory. The folks are standing there and haven't studied that. So I gave my students, this as the original Bernard Koopman's original paper, vintage 1931, and I gave the copy to students, and they don't understand. So it said, a nonlinear autonomous system can be represented as a linear dynamical system, so in an infinite dimensional space, and only high priests understand, but I know that normal people don't. So we looked at, so students said, well, how come globally linear in a linearization is just to put this point and then draw the straight line, so it's buried only in the vicinity, right here, right? So exact linear in an infinite dimension. What are you talking about? So they are not happy. So I just make it a big smile that everyone understands. So that's a quick 2 minutes and 3 minutes introductions. That is so simple to understand. So we have some. We start with the autonomous, no control. Okay, nonlinear dynamical system in discrete time. So state xt is an independent state variable and dimensional mapped to xt plus 1. Now for this, we consider also normal basis functions in the phi I. So we need an infinite number of basis functions that span the whole Hilbert space. Consider then we consider the composition of the basis function of this kind with this dynamic equations, f function f, circle map f. So we just replace the an xt by the fxt, which is on the same dimensions, and putting it here. This means that actually composition of these two functions, we write it in this way: fy is small circle f, and the functions of the xt. And if this actually composition of functions too involved in the Hilbert space, then this function can be expanded to a series of also normal the basis functions, right? So let's take as a simple vectorial finite dimensional case. So this is the new vector you want to represent. You basically take the projection onto axis of phi I, and then this is the component. So this vector can be reconstructed by actually multiplying this to this direction and multiplying this to this direction. You take the whole summation, you can reconstruct the original function. And then this is bracket represent the inner product between these two, which is actually function k, so it becomes an integral. The simplest example is trigonometric functions, and it turns out that simple Fourier series expansion. So you have some function Sx such as this is to be expanded through a series of sine, cosine, or exponential function. Cn is a coefficient which can be represented as a product. So now trick is this. So this is the equation I showed you. This function can be expanded into this form. So this is actually basis functions, right? So we have an infinite number of basis functions. So let's put this guy into infinite dimension of the vector phi1, phi2, creating this kind of vector, right? And this vector is multiplied by this coefficient. This is nothing but just after you compute this, it's just a one coefficient. So let's put it in Aij. Okay, and then actually we can arrange this to a matrix form like this. Ij component taken here to create the infinite dimensional by infinite dimensional matrix A. And then what's cool on the left hand side, phi I x is phi I f is basically replacing the x and putting it into here, right? What this means is basically next time step, state xt plus 1. In other words, xt1 t plus 1 state is actually converted to infinite dimensional vector phi1 to phi n. That is sitting the left hand side. So we're putting it into infinite vector here. You see this guy is given by matrix times a vector, which is linear. That's it. That's it. This is the quickest explanation. Well, in fact, this xt evaluated with the orthonormal function. This is kind of an output function, right? So you have many output functions. So in other words, you look at the nonlinear system from many, infinite number of eyes from the different angles. And then all the observations are made up into just one thing. And then what they see collectively is a kind of a linear behavior. How it changes is linear behavior. Okay. I just use the orthonormal basis function, but phi I it can be extended to just a general basis function that span the Hilbert space. We get the some just as a simple extension. We get this expression, and the zi is basically these observations. We call it observable. Infinite number of observables can be placed in this way. Now, so that is the case where we have no control. The original Koopman theory applies perfectly. However, our interest is to put the control here. And then actually original Koopman theory is not applicable to the control system. So what's the point? It's not applicable. However, this one we extended recently. So that this particular part is actually constant B matrix times UT. Otherwise, it's mostly state dependent B matrix, which is not so much friendly in the control the design. So I know this is one extension that we have made, and then the technique is trick is very simple. The linear exotic or XBU does not exist for general nonlinear control systems. However, some class of systems having a pretty good properties, we can actually use that. And then one such a class we found is the case that the actuator having its own the state, it has the dynamics in it with some state variables. And we found oftentimes that the actuator part of the dynamics, the control input to it may be linearly involved in here. All that part is a nonlinear. The Qt is actually a plant state, and that's a highly nonlinear part. And here too, it's a nonlinear. But as far as this guy is involved linearly, we can actually reduce that one into the Koopman form. So this is the outcome we can get, and the B is actually represented by this. So obviously, if you have this kind of structure, you can superimpose this guy in some way. So first you forget about this. You look at only this part. And then this is nothing but just a standard Koopman operator program. You create the Koopman operator for this, and then basically superpose this one into that. Well, that is something easy part we can find. So P bar Y bar is basically include all the observable functions and after this after P. And you get the that's a standard Koopman operator. Now, one issue is that P plus one, this is without actually a control, so we can add the control into this part, adding this guy, but that's okay. But maybe another very subtle point is that Y is also the function of P and the Q, and then this Y bar is the actually original P, which is used in the autonomous system that is actually doesn't have the control input in it. So there's a kind of gap between YT plus one, which we want, versus this guy. And then here the YT plus one, we have to modify PT plus one to something new input that comes in. So we need some kind of corrections, you have to make. And assuming that the time step is small enough and the original system is continuous, and we can actually approximate this one. So beyond this point is approximation. Approximate this to this form. So delta P is nothing but actuator dynamics, with and then without control input. So the difference is that the control input. So I know nicely this times this, which is actually linear time. And then the question is this: how you find it? But from the autonomous systems, we can approximate the impact of this, just a simple calculations, and we got the constant terms involved here. So actually, a B matrix here is given by this. This guy is a complete actually derivations, extensions of the Koopman theory, the two linear time invariant systems. We call this control coherent Koopman operations. Now, and we found that this is actually that this particular form that can be applied to many systems having a little bit of gearing compliance, like harmonic drives, the actuator side state and then load side state possess independent state variables, and same thing applies to hydraulic systems, and then the biomechanical, the muscle systems having some compliance in it. Even though you don't have any compliance, here's a very rigid one, we can actually create such compliance through some filter. This is the pre-filtering approach, we just published. This one has no constraint in it, so this approach can be applied broadly to a large area. So you have to check the control input appears linearly in the actuation dynamics. That's the first property. And then actuators and the plant dynamics must have the independent state variable. So these are the stuff we have to do. Now let's actually apply to some specific areas of applications. The first one is a rimless wheel. This is the simplest model of human gait, right? So you have a heart of this rimless wheel. So we built the kind of a rimless wheel with the 6 spokes, and this so each limb this length of the bodies with actuators. Now to locate this, we need 3 generalized coordinates x, y, theta. Also, 6 independent general coordinates needed for spoke lengths. However, once this one is in contact with the floor, in a causal conflict occurs. So X, Y, theta and versus these are not actually independent. So we have a causal conflict. To resolve that causal conflict, we can consider some viscoelasticity on the floor, and this guy is natural in many cases. Gate robotics, and they actually built the many complex the model of the viscoelasticity. We pick just one of them. We can say anything. So, or some limbs having this compliance intentionally to improve the performance. So once we have this, actuators, having some simple stuff like the linear actuator like this, and look at this dynamic equations. It sees the motor having some the motor rotor inertia, and they are basically constant inertia, right? So I wrote it here. IM is the effective inertia around the motor axis. And this dynamics is highly nonlinear, but input to U created by torque over here is linearly involved in this dynamic equation, meeting the kind of requirement I said. So state variables independent, and input is linearly involved. So we can apply the Koopman operator theory to this. So once you have it, you can get the linear model, and then matrix and A is determined from the associated no control autonomous system models. You can use the data treatment method or model based method or whatever, and then BY that can be actually determined from this or using this you can determine that analytically. So that is the case. Now we get the linear model, so we apply the MPC. So this is the control index and subjected to linear model over here. So we can guarantee a complex optimization, the fast computation in the real time. So good thing here is that, so as I said, this is the switch systems. One leg, this one is an airborne, and then one leg is contact with this, and instantaneously, two legs are basically in contact, right? So dynamics must be switched. However, the Koopman models include all of these cases in one model. And then actually looking at the time horizon, sometimes it's airborne, but now 1 point of contact, 2 point of contact, 1 point of contact again. This Koopman operator, is basically look at the whole, this actually switching, down the line. So, this is the, some simulations done by my students. So, this luminous, wheel, to find some way of moving forward. And actually, interestingly, so before touching, this is contracted, right, so that they bend more, and then actually, push it harder to get the more actually traction moving forward. And then again, I have to emphasize that the it can get the global actually linearization. So if so the region actually divided into 3 regions: airborne, no contact, 1 point of contact, 2 point of contact, and the switching is very tricky. But see the current state over here. It's very close to this border. But in this model, if you use the traditional one, it has no clue about what's happening after going across the border. If you take the Taylor expansion at this point, there's no information about this point, right? But Koopman is basically take the whole information and in high dimensional space, so it covers all the stuff, nicely. Of course, this means that you have to have a certain time horizon to cover, and so if the time horizon is very short, it doesn't work well. So as shown here, this guy is struggling, and can't actually move forward. And this is 10 time step is sometimes okay, but sometimes coming back and not very reliable. And extended to 20 time steps forward, it goes very stably. So it does actually need the kind of far-reaching point of, so, and after many multiple steps later, where to be going? That's actually needed. So yeah, so that's actually this limitless waves story. It's even more interesting is this guy and the dynamic pushing and then shoving. And here this is just very good classical award-winning paper by my former colleague Alberto Rodriguez. It's basically making this pushing control and assuming that the code is static, contact is maintained all the times. Having more restricted constraints. But this is what we like to do, right? Like so isohockey, the process is fully dynamic, right? And then no sequence of contact is assumed, and no reference trajectory is given, right? It's reactive and then real-time computation. That's what we like to do, and we get something similar to it. Here's the isohockey link, AR bearing stuff and pusher, and then this is the UR robot. And we modeled the UR robot as a high-end velocity feedback. So just with respect to endpoint, in input, basically commanded velocity is integrated. So this is a good enough model for this arm. Now look at the this slider, air pack. Yeah, we need actually, this, 6-dimensional state variables, X, Y, and then the rotations. These two, we want to make them actually independent. Well, they're not in contact, that's okay. But in contact, it's basically conflict occurred. So we introduce some compliance, and we put some pusher compliance into this. With this, we get the clarify the requirement for Koopman operations, and then we build this model. And then actually finding the observable functions, we use neural net. This is now the standard techniques in the Koopman community, and then we use that and put it into this robot. And here's the things, here's the pack, circular pack. Originally, the pusher is on this side. We like to move the pack to the other side. So first, MPC, think about it, and I have to change the contact point and move around here, and then contacting here, and then move around this trajectory to move the object to this point by minimizing the cost of functional. And this is the case actually. I know this Q is relatively small, and then R is relatively large. Now, interestingly, yeah, so this is really reactive. So if you disturb it, it can actually make quick corrections and then drive this one to the target point, very nicely. No predefined contact sequence and no code static assumption or planning at the real time. Now, this is actually our measurement of controller run times. It's less than actually 10 milliseconds. 100 hertz is achieved. Yeah, it's on average only 5.3 milliseconds. And if you compare this one to traditional method, which is basically going to mixed integer nonlinear programming, and that takes almost 100 times longer time. So the drastic reduction has been achieved with this. So I know even more exciting thing to me is the kind of switching between control mode, the driving, and then the shoveling. Even just changing the small change to the performance index R and the Q matrices. Actually, the system can find the appropriate actions on the fly. Yeah, so this is a case that we just Q slightly larger and then R small. So larger input is larger control effort is allowed. Then what happens is that when the robot sees the goal is actually far, then actually instead of dribbling this object, but it's a kick. shoot. And so when we didn't do anything, but just changing the control policy a little bit, and then actually seamlessly it is implemented and executed in here. So a little bit in the parameter study, a few parameters are very important, and then usually Koopman is very sensitive to parameters. So if the flow of friction is one of the most important parameters, if that is correctly estimated, you get a very nice dribbling, boom, 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 boom. And if this is actually wrongly estimated, the real friction is much lower than the actual estimated one. It will overshoot and go this way and this way. But because of the feedback, it can actually handle this. Now, it is nice to incorporate the friction into this, right? So extending this original neural net, this is to represent the basis functions talk about observables that can be actually found by using the neural net based on some data. Now, training this, we can actually put the friction into this additional state of the this input and train this. So this neural net knows all the cases for different value of friction. And then in real time, in some way, we can estimate the friction value from the real data on time, on the fly, and then the estimated value to put in here, and then we extract the linear model corresponding to that friction. That actually makes it much more actually accurate. So horizontal axis is friction, and then vertical axis is tracking error. And if you do nothing, low friction part is a very bad, large error. But with that correction, it's flat out. Very nice performance is guaranteed. Maybe one of you ask a question: what if this actually putting some compliance here, if the stiffness is pusher stiffness higher? Maybe I'm cheating a little bit, because I'm putting some compliance. So it's a valid question, what happens there? What if the pusher is very stiff? Does it impact the Koopman prediction accuracy? Yes. And then actually, is there any fundamental limitations? Yes. So we actually did some calculations. Shown here is horizontal axis is the pusher stiffness in a logarithmic scale, and then the vertical axis is prediction error. So blue line actually, it's okay, the small, prediction error, but beyond a certain stiffness, it tend to distort and move up very sharply. So it doesn't work, very much, high friction. At the same time, if this, compliance, stiffness is extremely low, that means actually that this system is not really high fidelity control. You have to move a lot to generate the force. So controllability is basically going down. So that's represented by this orange line. The smaller is better. So there's some kind of a sweet spot somewhere in between. Oh, sorry, I'm blocking you. Yeah, so that is actually this spot, by taking the two conflicting requirements, we can make the good trade-off. And this may be a kind of a constraint, but we can take this as an opportunity. Pusher compliance is something that we can design, right? So we can find the best compliance based on the ultimate control performance. So overall control performance is most important. To optimize that, we can just design this the performance. So I think I'm running out of time. So I know I talk about these two examples. We have some other interesting stuff, but let me just go into a summary. So Koopman operator provides a new type of dynamic representation based on the compositional operator theory, and that actually supplements differential algebra-based state equation or something like this. This is good, but I know it's not so much convenient. End up with a nonlinear, and then actually switch the system is very difficult to deal with, right? Net alone, this one has some problem. So we introduced this. And so and instead of going to this one, this representation, real-time computation, 100 times faster, and then the robot to discover and quite elaborate control stuff. So how many 3 steps later, it's going to be good or bad. We can actually predict that. So this is my team. I love to work with these talented young people. And we got the this funding source. And this is something interesting I would like to share with you, some future work. So I think football is very important to Purdue, right? Am I correct? Right? I can't get the ticket over here. So looking at the wide receivers, purely athletic, one hand catch, it's really amazing thing. The human has 200 degrees of freedom and 600 muscles. Well, one can control and coordinate the 600 muscles, right? Yeah, humanoid is a big breakthrough. I think, the kind of robotics textbook is based on the 6DOF robot era. Yeah, and now we don't have much tools to deal with the 28 or higher degrees of freedom. And that's why I saw the many efforts going on to Purdue. But I like to identify there's a significant gap between the humans and the system. And the Koopman over there too does not scale very well, right? So how do we really cope with the curse of dimensionality? And then there's an interesting discussion with the neuroscience scientist. And I know she's a very famous person in neuro motor control. Yeah, neuroscience areas, I know it is known, very well known that the 600 muscles are not controlled independently, but they are grouped together. And when you are a baby, you have some hardwired connections about how you coordinate several muscles together. But as you are getting older, your walking is more smoother because you learn the better actual coordination about those muscles, signals. And that's actually called synergy. And the synergy is, in a sense, is simple as actually old-fashioned synergy was based on covariance matrix analysis, and then taking the linear excuse me most just taking the eigenvalue and eigenvectors of covariance and principal component analysis. Excuse me, taking that one, the linear model. But more recent one is going to higher than nonlinear thing. It turns out that the hundreds of muscles that motion can be represented with just a handful of variables. Each of them is basically basis functions. Okay, basis functions. And that nonlinear map can be interpreted as observables of Koopman. So this is encouraging. The human has found and then discovered already some actually good observable nonlinear functions. That's actually the synergies. So I know it's kind of latent space, how the low dimensional space, we can control that. And then that the famous neuro scientist told me, yeah, it is very much believable. It is nothing but a conjecture, but a human dynamic, the body control may be linear in a high dimensional space. There's no luxury, there's no time to solve the nonlinear optimization program for him. But he's just looking at some specific key signals coming out of it. And then boom, then you can find the control actions. That's a simple linear control. That may be the possible scenario, although there's no way to put the probe into this and then find, oh, there's a Koopman. There's no such things to help with. However, it is basically giving us some interesting goal that the human body is one embodiment, and this actually metaphor of concrete robot motion. We are working well handling this, right? So that's actually encouraging. I like to see that kind of stuff. So I think I just show the many things that we I have done, but all the guru like me have actually reviewed some of the amazing human function, but that's a small, very small functions, and there are much more to explore if you look at the humans or animals, right? Look at your hands and animals and any lifelike activities. They are your textbook, and then sources of inspirations. So robotics is that actually, rich and copious, the subject. I don't think data solve that kind of robotics. Maybe different, very localized robotics can be solved by the data. So I know. Let's look at the what's going to happen after this era. So not just running on the bandwagon, but running on the bandwagon is important for the purpose of raising funding. So I'm not actually. I love to get some money from there, but I know. Just for your own academic research, for your own scientific curiosity, your journey, let's look at our own body and our own what you have inside. Still, so many things and not discovered, right? So that's actually my comment today. Thank you.
Yeah. So, any questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you so much. Brilliant presentations, and particularly love your illustration and undergrad tutorial about. So my question is more leaning towards the application side. So you mentioned Koopman is the methodology defined on infinite dimensions of basis, right? So when it comes to applications, how your students on your lab design the lattice space, what's the dimension of that lattice space? Do you find the intertwine between the dimension of lattice space and the number of the data sets when it comes to data-driven improvement?
Yeah, good questions. And actually, how you truncate and how you cut off the the dimensions is actually still black art. It's art, So that means my graduate students are spending hours in front of the computer and being frustrated, every night. But I know one good thing I like to talk about is that once you get the linear model, good or bad, the question is how bad, how good that the model is. Of course, prediction accuracy itself is important, point. But I know ultimately we like to have a better controls, right? So, Koopman linear model allow us to quickly compute the optimal control, the MPC or whatever, right? So, that path is very quick. So we can actually, how good and bad that will be, upon the control performance in a very straightforward manner. Even though the prediction accuracy is good, it does not mean that they're good for controls, right? But I know the exit side control is linear, so it's simple, transparent, and then that's streamline the evaluation process. You can use that information back to training, discovering the good set of observable function. Observable function, by the way, is a way to recast the original systems, to linear system. That's a nonlinear mapping, and then nonlinear function is called observable. That's the key things you have to tune. Yeah, and then it's infinite, but it should be cut off. How many orders is actually important. Our system is up to 12 degrees of freedom. And the recent publications, they applied this to 4-leg robots. They used 900 observables. So that's all the brute force. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk. I'm working on hybrid systems, so I'm curious about how could you give us a little bit more intuition about how a hybrid system transfer into a linear system, because it is a lot of simplification. Is that I can interpret that some of the state in the linear system might represent a compact mode or
right.
Or how
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very reasonable questions, and I displayed it here. That's the details are shown up in the new Nature Communications paper that actually look at the a particular class of systems. All right, yeah, and then it's very reasonable in case of the leg robot, contact to the floor. We have some kind of compliance. Yeah, otherwise the modeling, of course, some say that the straight, rigid contact must be considered, but that does not actually mean the overall control performance is good. So having some compliance is good, right? So that's actually a special case, I have to say. In general, they're very hard switching, and no way to do that. Although, Koopman theory, the existence of actually a Koopman, I know, there's no reason that actually, discontinuity is very much, party stopper. I can show you this few, exceptions, even though the system is discontinuous, but, the Koopman is basically converges. Yeah, as you increase the number of observable functions to zero. So this is still some mathematicians are still working on it. It's not clear, but I know usually it's very hard to program once it is have a very sharp discontinuity. But my point is looking at the more one layer deeper physical phenomena. That the discontinuity often comes from basically modeling artifact. That way we want to model, the discontinuously. If you think that's the right way to do it, But I know microscopic level, it is nothing discontinuous. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually did a lot of experiments on walking robots. We have to have the robot stamp on the ground really, really hard in order to see any jumps in the center of mass velocity. So actually, in reality, it's a continuous system because the contact between the feet and the ground are compliant.
Yeah, typically, once you have a sharp, edge, like that, we need more actually observable functions. So I know Koopman community is debating, what is the special class of observable functions that can specifically deal with the, discontinuous or the sharp edge type of thing. Maybe some results coming out recently.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Can I?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you for the great talk. So in my understanding, what you have proposed is some sort of like indirect data-driven control scheme. It means that you're identifying the system to be like infinite dimensional linear system first, and then you attach some, like apply some existing linear control.
True.
So my first question is like, is there any specific reason you chose this MPC to be your controller attached to your system? Is the first one. And the second one is like, have you ever considered any kind of direct method, which means that you might be able to use the Koopman operator to come up with some desired control law directly? So those were the two questions I had.
Yeah, one actually practical reason is that because we actually lift the systems, right? So true dimension, the true actually independent number of variables and state variables is actually much smaller. So obviously the controllability is violated. Obviously, right? Right. So optimal control in general, the MPC in particular, we don't care the controllability. So that's actually one of the very practical reasons why actually Koopman meet with MPC. But I know you are right. For with the careful actually approach, we can use it in more general way. Yeah, right. But no one has tried that. Yeah, because of the very bad controllability.
Yeah, cool.
So I have thank you for the talk, and I just have a question about using neural network to approximate the observable function. And in particular, I just want to get more of your insights on if you have any also. So first of all, for the Koopman community right now, do they have any preference of what kind of neural network do they use to approximate this kind of Koopman observables? for you, do you think there is a certain architecture that will benefit for control design?
Yeah, that's now the hot topic, a very hot topic. In my group, I know maybe I know we haven't published it, but I know just I can disclose. So I know gate controls, right? This guy, there's some kind of patterns which is useful. So before doing this, you should do that proactively. You just put some legs and behind it, right? So there's some kind of an interesting analysis can be made if you look at the data, right? So applying the techniques like attention transformer that can actually pinpoint which segment of the patterns is related to previous actions, right? So you can actually find what are actually important features to extract. Oh, so that kind of pre-processing converted to transformer that may create the better one. And in fact, we're getting a little bit actually on the longer term predictions of beta, right? Something like that. Well, there's a certain challenges involved in this area, and people use autocorrelation, actually, autoencoder, thank you, autoencoders, and that kind of things have been used. Some large group of people specifically working on the neural net, design, specifically useful for the Koopman.
Any questions? I remember there was a question over there. No? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the question. Can your group ever define the open water that is your system, like the bilingual system or the system? So, if you can try to approximate the system by the airport, then you have like the more available flexibility.
Yeah. So one of the challenges involved in this Koopman theory applied to control system design is that actually if you do nothing then the V matrix becomes actually configuration dependent. X is involved, state X is involved in that, and oftentimes that becomes a bilinear system, right? So and in the past 3-4 years, lots of actually papers, published in the bilinear, modeling, and then that is actually, probably in some cases more, actually accurate. I'm not actually objecting to that, but it's not linear. So our excitement plans, building the Koopman is a heck of an effort, and the goal is not linear, we can't, more importantly, convex optimizations is not guaranteed. So our appetite went down, so we did not go into that direction. But looking at some particular properties of actuators, that's not the issue. Yeah, we're very accurate now. So.
Any further questions? Yeah, maybe I will ask one question for all the students. Do you have any advice or lessons you want the students to learn? What are the advice in the era of AI?
Yeah, I know. This is the same comment I made at the NSF PI keynote. So when I started when I was your age, not many people know in this robotics area, right? So whatever we do, something new, and you feel that's not the fear. Now, over 50 years of things, and many things have been done. So no matter what I try to do, things someone have done this many years ago. And some actually older guy guru like me, oh, you have to read the papers about 19 something. I was not wrong, right? So you feel that something, you are more confined. Bullshit, I think you should have the robotics much richer, as I said many times, return and then propound, go back to your hand. There's still so many things that are involved here. Okay, so no matter what has been done, all the works and just to disclose just a small portion of something very rich stuff. Still the big part is uncovered. Really actually, rich things are still existing. Go to that, if you are young, put to that point. So don't be pessimistic, this area has lots of actually exciting things to this world.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the incredible.
I